Everybody, good afternoon. It's Bobby coming to you live from SoCal Zone 10. Today, as promised, I want to show you how to properly root fig cuttings for your best success rate and the easiest way to do it. It's super simple. Few simple tools is all you need. Lay things out ahead of time and get it done. First thing you're going to need are fig cuttings. And as you see here, we have 6 different fig cuttings, 8 to 10 per each bag. In another video, I explained one of my friends stopped by who owns a nursery and an orchard, gave me a bunch of branches that they had cut off the trees. I cut them into fig cuttings, sterilized them, put them into bags, and stuck them in my refrigerator so they could stay nice and moist. As you can see, this is tree variety number 6. I put it in the bag on October 2nd. And there's 12 cuttings in this bag right here. Today's October 25th, so we just want to get a jump on our spring plantings. Luckily here in Zone 10, it doesn't freeze very often. It doesn't get that cold. So we can root these cuttings in our garage, take them out during the day, put them in the sun where it's nice and warm, and we really are blessed. I know some of you all in the colder climates are going to get jealous with this video, but I hope you watch it, okay? And if you learn something, please reach out, show you how easy this is. So once you have your fig cuttings, you're going to need some tree pots. That's the best way to root your fig cuttings, and I'll tell you why. The reason I like tree pots so much is because look how big these are. These are 9 inches deep, so it's easy to get a large amount of really good growing medium in here, so you don't have to water them but maybe once a month, even in arid Southern California. And the great thing about a tree pot is you're going to put your fig cutting or pomegranate cutting same way in here, and you're going to stick it down to about this level if the cutting's big enough. If the cutting's any smaller, you really don't want to mess with it. But if your cutting's a good size and you've got 3 to 4 growth rings, which I'll explain later, you're going to stick it down to about this level here. So with any luck, there's always going to be some moisture down in this area, but you definitely don't want to overwater your fig cuttings. The worst thing that you could do with fig cuttings, giving them too much water and keeping the soil medium too wet. What that'll do is rot your roots before you ever get a chance for that cutting to take. So the tree pots are great for that, because if you see how deep these are, they're 9 inches deep. There's always going to be some moisture in the bottom of this, and you're always going to have a little bit of time before it gets totally dry, and that'll also kill your cutting. So you want to pick this up and feel the weight, and if it's heavier, you're going to judge that based on your moisture level. So once you fill this up with your cutting and with your grow medium, I want you to pick it up and make a note of the weight of that container. Then, when you wonder if it's time to water again, simply pick this up and feel the weight and compare it to when it was dry. You're going to have to remember, it gets easier the more you do it. Okay, but right here, this thing feels like a nice, like I'm holding a nice grapefruit, okay? So it obviously doesn't need any more water. I've got 3 of my Greek heirloom strawberry crunch cuttings in here. Tree pots are fantastic. You can get them from Greenhouse Megastore. Just Google them and you'll find it. You can also order this box that 16 of these tree pots will sit in, and they're 9 by 4 right around there. And the nice thing about these is they have holes on the bottom, so if there's too much moisture and water, they'll drain out, which is really, really easy and good. And it also keeps 16 of these nice and stable. You don't want these falling over. If they fall over, they're really top heavy. They're going to lose their soil. It's just not going to work good. Spend the extra money. Go to Greenhouse Megastore. Order your tree pots. Get one of these boxes that they sit in, and you'll be good to go, okay? Next thing you're going to want to have is some grafting tape or parafilm. This is simply a wax paraffin tape that you're going to wrap around the top of your cuttings. And you're going to want are some good scissors. These are actually Taylor scissors that are really long and really good and a great sharp edge. These work great because you need to cut this if you buy it in bulk like I do. I love this Parafilm M. It's a laboratory film. This stuff lasts 2-3 years. You keep it in a Ziploc bag and throw it in your refrigerator. Take it out about 15-20 minutes before you want to use it so it gets to room temp. Next thing you're going to want to have is a pair of pruning shears. And I'm going to show you the easiest way I know to sterilize those. Super easy. Next thing you're going to want is a really good growing medium that's got a lot of perlite in it. You want a lot of drainage. So you know how much I love to use these clear tote bins, right? It makes everything super easy. It's really clean, no mess, no fuss. You got it. Go through here, break up any of the big clumps, right? You don't want any of these balls in there. So what you want to do is break all that up really good before you put that in your tree pot. Next thing you want to do is do them all at one time. It's super easy, all right? Next thing you're going to want to use, and it's not necessary, but it increases your odds, is a root growth hormone. I really like this powdered version because I feel the gel and the liquid versions increase the odds of root rot, whereas I've never had an issue with the powder version. And I don't really worry about you contaminating this from one cutting to another. I've never had any major issues, so I think you're good to go. Just dip your cutting right in here and go from cutting to cutting. You don't need to add water to the cuttings when you do it. There's moisture on them if you store them correctly. That's why you store them in these Ziploc bags in your refrigerator. And after you sterilize them and clean them, like I showed you in another video, and I will try to link that here, you just put them in there after they're about 80-90% dry, and they'll perspire and sweat while they're in there. They're living things. You don't want anything to dry out, okay? As you know, I am a big fan of ProMix. I would usually use either a ProMix HP or a ProMix BX when I root cuttings, but I was in Lowe's the other day and they had this Sunshine Mix number 4. Aggregate plus professional growing medium with mycorrhizal. And to be honest with you, it feels exactly like ProMix, and I wouldn't doubt that ProMix is actually making it for them. When there was an open bag in the Lowe's department store, I felt it. It felt just like ProMix. It looked just like ProMix. The only big difference I can see is this is a 3 cubic foot compressed cube, whereas all the ProMix is going to 3.8 cubic feet. It looks just like ProMix, feels just like ProMix. I think it's close. I think it's right in between BX and HP, which is good for me. Sometimes HP on the ProMix, which stands for high porosity, has a little bit too much drainage for Southern California. BX is great for planting into module trays, but sometimes it holds a little too much moisture. So if I'm typically going to use BX, I will mix it with perlite. Unfortunately, I am all out of perlite. As you can see, we used a lot of it in this last run for these Greek fig cuttings. But this has plenty of perlite in it. I'm confident that we'll have good results. Now look, you could do this however you want. You can use hydrogen peroxide. You can use rubbing alcohol. But what I like to do is this works really well. It gets all the sap and the juices from the plant off. And then after you heat that up, I simply take a paper towel. You definitely want to be careful because that's hot. And I rub that off there. Now, if you plan ahead, you could simply just soak these in hydrogen peroxide. And that's easy too. But if you're in a bind, grab a lighter, heat it up, and take care of business. Just fill up all of our tree pots, and I like to do everything in order. So I'll fill all the tree pots. I'll cut every cutting. I'll wrap it on one end. I'll dip the other end. I'll put it in my container. Super easy. So you basically just want to fill these up. Stay upwind of your growing medium. Fill those up to the top, okay? Don't push it down. Just like always, simply slam it down a few times. Gets to the level you want. On to the next one. Fill it up. Any of these big wood pieces, it could be ProMix, take those out. Any clumps that pop to the surface, simply grind them down. And now it's important for you to keep moving this medium as you get down to the bottom of your tote bin, because there's going to be more clumps. So you just want to mix that up. You don't want to pick clumps in these tree pots, or in any pots for that matter. And it's super important for you to pack this down, because you don't want to think it's full, then put your cutting in there, get all ready, and water them all in, and your soil level's down here. That's just not going to work, okay? So pack them down, make sure they're ready. After we've got our tree pots full, I'm going to go to my cuttings. Now, here's a beautiful, perfect cutting for you. So if you've never seen a fig cutting, that's what it looks like right there, okay? So that's your growth end. And that's the end we cut away from the tree. Generally, you're going to cut the end that you pull off of the tree at an angle so you can identify it. This one's easy to identify. It's got a growth tip right there. But if you don't know how to identify it, if it's just a cutting and you're not sure which way it is, obviously the larger diameter as opposed to the smaller diameter is going to tell you which way it goes. And there's another hint that you want to see as well. So this is going to be a leaf. And this is going to be a fig. Figs always hang below the leaf, okay? So you could tell that was an old leaf, and that was a fig that was snapped off. Fig that was snapped off. Fig that was snapped off. That's perfect right there, okay? And you always want to have one that has at least 4 growth segments. So here's a growth segment. Here's a growth segment that starts right here. It's hard to see. But I cut these so they're ready to actually go in the ground. I also cut them to go in the ground like that because they slide through the dirt easier and the soil easier. But this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, basically 8 growth segments. It's about 9 inches long. That is a beautiful, beautiful cutting. It's nice and straight. If anybody ever gets a cutting from me, if it's for free, I'll send you what I can. If you buy it, I'll send you something really beautiful like this. Here's a cutting that could use a cut. So I cut this one further down in the growth ring. You want to be close to that growth ring, because what it's going to do is this area right here will send out new roots. So all we're going to do is we're going to simply cut that on a 45. And that's why it's important to have really sharp tools. Keep your finger out of that. Now that I have a new cut, I'm simply going to take my rooting hormone, and I'm going to dip my cutting, shake off any extra, in that rooting hormone, okay? And then I am simply going to push that down. So I don't worry about taking this back out, because that growth hormone is going to get washed down there. You want to be in the middle of your container, and I'm going to stick that down pretty deep. So I'm going to stick that right to about there, and that's a perfect spot. Now that cutting's going to be, bottom of that cutting's going to be right about here. So it's really easy to control that moisture for me. But it's also really easy, if you don't know what you're doing, to keep that soggy, and you definitely don't want to do that. There's one. Now I don't really need to push this in. We're going to water it in. But if you're not straight, here's a good time to straighten up your cutting. Here's cutting number 2 that we did. And I'm going to put that right here. I told you I was going to forget that. Next thing you want to do is cut your paraffin down to the correct size. So what I like to do is I take off a pretty good size sheet and I cut it off. I cut these to size, but I like to cut these about 1/2 inch wide by 4 inches long, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that in half again, because that is going to stretch as you pull it, and you're going to pull it as you go around your cutting. If you forget like I did at this stage, you can pull it back out. But if you don't want to, simply take that, hold it on one side, and at a slight angle, wrap it around, and as you wrap, slowly stretch that film. Do not break off that growth tip, okay? Get over the top and just keep coming up, okay? And then you give it a little pinch and you're nice and tight. You go right to the next one, same exact thing. This one I'm going to pull out and I'm going to show you up close. So what you're going to do is you've got this piece of paraffin film right here, and you've got your cutting. You're going to start right below that segment, and you're going to twist, turn, pull. Pull, turn. Okay, and you want to get that bud covered. Now, if that pops through, don't worry about it. Just put a double layer over it. The one thing you don't want to do is pull off that growth tip. So you get over the top, go over the top, and just give it a nice little pinch. See how that is all sealed in there? That will not dry out on you. And in Southern California, you don't have to worry about mold building up in there. If you live in the South or you live in a humid area, keep an eye on that and don't let that get moldy. If it does, take that off. And then every once in a while, spray it with a water bottle to keep it damp. Now, if your cutting's a little wonky, it's perfect time to straighten out that trunk. Come in at an angle until that is straight, and you're good to go. And when you water this in, that'll all settle. So these are all fresh tips, but I've got room here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim them again. 1, 2. Okay? Next thing, I'm going to wrap it. And this is fun. It's quick if you do it all at once. Do not be intimidated by this. Super, super easy. Okay? We're going to dip it. And we're going into the medium. Don't push it all the way down to the floor. You want to keep it about that far from the bottom. Put those back for later. We're only going to do a couple of cuttings each because I'm running out of tree pots. I got to order some more. Label them. Now that they're all labeled, the only thing I have to do is water them in. Fill that pot up to the top, go to the next one. Fill it to the top, next one. Alright, if you get that wax wet. We'll give them one more dose of water and we'll be done. We're going to let those fig cuttings drain now in their tree pots, and tomorrow morning we'll stick them in the garage for a couple of days. And as soon as we see some grow, put them into the sunlight. But until then, they'll stay in the dark, they'll stay in the garage. And in the summer in SoCal, you won't have to water those for about 30 days. In the winter, it's going to be even longer, so it's a really easy way to root your cuttings. Follow these steps and you'll have success almost every single time. The more you do it, the better you get. And you can make copy after copy after copy of the same exact fig tree, okay? So share it with your friends and family, trade it with people for stuff you don't have, and just have fun with it, okay? We'll see you next time. Hit me up with a like if you learned something. If you made it to the end of this long video, then you know what? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. From Zone 10 here in SoCal, beautiful overcast, cool day today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.